Hi, welcome back, bienvenue and all that jazz. It's time to continue the wrap-up catch-ups. So I'm almost done wrapping up 2023. So this is the final monthly wrap-up from 2023 for December. And then all I'll have to do is catch up with January, and then hopefully my favorite books of 2023 will be coming sooner rather than later, but I figure might as well still talk about them because I did read a lot of really good books in the year of 2023. But with all of that being said, let's just jump straight into this because I do have quite a few books to talk about. So as usual, we'll start with some basic statistics. In the month of December, I got to 12 books, which totaled 7,060 pages. And as usual, a lot of them were immersion reads. So I also listened to 52.9 hours of audiobook goodness. All of this together gave an average rating of 4.08 stars. So I really quite enjoyed the majority of what I read, which is always lovely. I don't have anything less than 3 stars, so we love that for me. So with that being said, the statistics are all out of the way. So let's just jump straight into the books themselves. And as usual, we will go in ascending star order from my least favorite to my most favorite read of the month. So shocking, absolutely nobody. My least favorite read of the month was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. So this was the sequel to Fourth Wing. And I had originally given it 3 stars, but like on hindsight, I think that that's kind of a lie. I think it's probably more like 2.5 stars, to be totally honest. And that's largely because the romance elements in this book, in this series, in this whatever, are just not, they don't do it for me. When I think fantasy romance, I don't mind having like the romance as the central driving force of a lot of the drama in the story and all of that kind of stuff. However, I want the romance to actually feel like there's some kind of development there. And with Iron Flame, there was a situation that happened at the end of Fourth Wing that I don't want to mention because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But due to that, we had kind of a regression in our relationship to try to like extend the life of the pining, and I don't think that the pining was very well done. The smutty scenes were fine, but like the smirkshy talk was like really not, it didn't get anything off the couch, shall we say, as the, what was it, the matchmaker or whatever, who used to be on Bravo or something, used to say. So like it's something I read. The end, there was some fun kind of tropey stuff with the dragons and getting to meet some other animal writers that weren't dragons was also fun, and the dynamic between them and the dragon writers and kind of poking fun at this kind of inaneness of a lot of how the dragon writing school is run was entertaining enough. Like it was fine, but like the romance, and it's a fantasy romance, so the romance needs to be a little bit better. Then the next thing I'll talk about is The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. This is book 2 in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. And I have a problem. So I did DNF it like in February of 2023. And then I was flipping through my Kindle towards the end of the year and saw that I was at like 75%. And so I opened it and it estimated that I had less than 2 hours left in the book. And so then I just felt the need to finish it because, hi, my name is Rodger and I have problems actually sticking to DNFing things. So I did go back and finish it. And the book is a 3-star because the first 25% and last 25% I thought were excellent. I really like the horror elements, especially around the magic system, because there's like these evil spells that people are incanting that are literally like so powerful that like make them bleed from their mouth. Like it's just like kind of horrific imagery. And we have almost that kind of like eldritch level of horror surrounding the demons where you'll see them and it'll almost like break your mind. And like, it's just kind of cool. And so like the weird culty, otherworldly bits were by far my favorite parts of The Tyranny of Faith. And then like the center 50%, similar to friggin' House of Sky and Breath, we had this mystery, and without spoiling anything, the way that the mystery was concluded made me feel like what was the point of doing any of that? Like it literally felt like a complete waste of time. And I know that some people love the kind of tongue-in-cheekness of like underlining how pointless sometimes struggles are and trying to like point out flaws with characters by having plot beats like that. But I literally cannot stand when the point was there was no point. Like I am like, okay, well, thanks for trolling me for like 500 pages, asshole. So like that kind of thing just does not do the thing for me personally. But if you do like that and you kind of want that kind of storytelling element, then it's definitely there. And if you just want to check out a series with like really horrific elements, then I think it's worth giving The Empire of the Wolf a try. I have since read the concluding novel, and that will be in my January wrap-up, so I won't share any like overall thoughts of the entire series. But Tyranny of Faith in particular, like a large portion of that book was a complete waste of my time. Up next, we have my one 3.5-star read of the month, and that was The Art of Destiny by Wesley Chu. This is the sequel to The Art of Prophecy, and I did not like this anywhere near as much as The Art of Prophecy. Clearly, it was only 3.5 stars. It was fine, but with The Art of Prophecy, we were kind of building up to this climactic battle with the Eternal Khan, and this book, I'm assuming it's going to be a trilogy, felt very much like an interlude of like a post credits and like setting up. It was very much Middlebrook syndrome-y, and we spent a lot of time kind of all hiding together doing training sequences, and like it was just very fine. Like there was nothing super exciting about this one. There was nothing really that new revealed in my opinion. We just saw some of our characters dealing with the aftermath of the previous book and setting up for the next book, and so that just doesn't make for the most exciting reading experience. It was very adequate. And that's all I can say. I'm hoping that like the conclusion of this trilogy really like brings it home, but only time will tell. I also don't know if it's actually a trilogy. So if you know, feel free to correct me in the comments or let me know how many books there's actually going to be. But like this book very much had like very little progression for me. Then up next, I read Her Radiant Curse by Elizabeth Lim. This is the prequel-ish story to the Six Crimson Cranes duology. And it was fun. Like, I quite enjoy Elizabeth Lim's writing style. I really like her kind of rich, like folklore-y feeling worlds. Six Crimson Cranes is kind of a retelling of, what is it, like the Wild Swan or whatever, where you have a main character who has been cursed with a pot on her head by an evil queen, and her brothers have been transformed into cranes, and if she speaks, one of them will die for each word she utters, and so she kind of goes on this quest to break a curse. And so on this one, we are finding out more about the evil queen and how her childhood was and how she came to where she was. We did find out more about her in book 2, The Dragon's Promise. So we did know a lot of this information, but it was kind of fun just seeing the characters and kind of going through the adventure with them. So I don't think that I would read this first. I would still start with Six Crimson Cranes and then do The Dragon's Promise. And then if you really love the world and want just a little bit more, then I would read Her Radiant Curse. But I don't know that I would recommend like reading it kind of in isolation. Then I concluded my journey through The Faithful and the Fallen. So this was a buddy read that Chris from A Fictional Escapist and I had been doing since September of 2023. And we were reading one book a month. And so we read the final book, Wrath, in the month of December. And I have to admit that the way that people talk about The Faithful and the Fallen quartet made me very excited for it, made me think that it was, okay, GGB, we're ladies here. Made me think that it was going to be like a lot more epic in scope. I don't know, like I'm not in love with that whole trope of there's less magic in the world now, magic is kind of leaving, or very low magic stories. Like that just doesn't ooze fantasy in the way that I want it to. So I just wanted there to be more magic, one. And then two, there was kind of like the epic conflict at the very end, but I felt like it was resolved so quickly that it was kind of like, okay, like we built up for 4 books for that. So it was like, on one hand, fun and dynamic and like bombastic. And on the other hand, a little underwhelming. So that's where it kind of settled at 4 stars. Because I did end up really liking the characters by the end of the story. I thought that because we had spent so much time seeing them prior to like these kind of epic events kind of getting going, that we really knew who these characters were. And so when things happened to them, you felt things. But then like the epic plot beats just, they didn't resolve in my favorite way. So we'll just leave it at that. So like I would say that if you like really low magic and really character-focused stories, then check out The Faithful and the Fallen by all means, but just don't expect like the most epic of epic sauceness in this particular one. But I'm definitely like intrigued by the way that John Gwynne does battles. I'm intrigued by the way that he does character work. And so I will definitely be reading more of his stuff, because I know that there's a follow-up, I want to say trilogy of Blood and Bone or something like that. And then there's also his newer series that starts with Shadow of the Gods. And so I'm really curious to see what else he can do. Then up next, I'll talk about The Deepest Blue. This is by Beth Durst. This is a standalone novel set in the world of the Queens of Frenthia series. I think that it is best read after the main trilogy because there are allusions to events in the main series, but we are in a different place in the world. And it's just another fun adventure. So like the characters aren't really connected to the main series. We're in a very different atmosphere because in the original trilogy, we are much more in like a foresty type atmosphere and then kind of mountainy. And so this one is very much like islands in the sea. And it's just a fun adventure. So if you want like a really cool, fun adventure with ocean spirits and just another book that feels more like book 1 in the Queens of Renthia, like if you read the trilogy and were disappointed like me in book 3, and you want to have that kind of just experience of hanging out with new spirits and discovering new things about the world again, and then I would highly recommend you check out The Deepest Blue. Then I continued my Court of Thorns and Roses journey so that I could be ready to read House of Flame and Shadow, which I've also read, so that will be in a future wrap-up. But Court of Mist and Fury by Miss Sarah J. Maas was actually surprisingly good. So usually I have a bone to pick. Oh, and all of these that I've been talking about have been 4 stars still so far. Just if you were wondering, approximate ratings. So A Court of Mist and Fury, I was quite surprised because usually I have a bone to pick with Miss SJM and the way that she does a romance. She does a very aggressively, like traditional gender role-y, heteronormative-y, like dominant male type romance and love interest. And she didn't do that at all in A Court of Mist and Fury. The dynamics between the male love interest, I don't want to spoil it just in case you don't know, and Thera was, I loved it. Like, he was so respectful of her and appreciated her boundaries and was like very supportive. And we got to see all the cute moments of like the dates together. And we got to see a little bit of like steaminess between them. Like it was just romance, how romance should be done for me personally. Like I need to believe that there's some kind of compatibility outside of the bedroom in order to really buy into this like ride or die, love until the end of time type romance. And I thought that A Court of Mist and Fury actually did it like amazingly well. And I also just like the way that Sarah J. Maas does a plot. She does the Here Comes the Cavalry trope better than almost anybody. And so just learning more about the lore of this world and going on some adventures with our characters, like it's just really a great time. So I can see why a lot of people have Akko Math as their favorite in the entire Court of Thorns and Roses series, because it is also my favorite in that series. It's clearly not like a favorite of all time. It's only a 4-star read for me, but like considering that I went into ACOTAR expecting to friggin' hate everything about it, actually being like, I actually like this romance. I like the dynamics between, like it was like shocking to me that I ended up loving it, like even as a 4-star read. So look at me go. I don't have as nice of things to say for Akko War, Akko Fast, or Akko. So stay tuned for those because I read those all in January. So that will be in my next wrap up. And then I've very much just been on a kick, especially towards the end of the year, of trying to like finish up any series that I could or do continuations that I had. So then I read The Midnight Kingdom by Tara Sim. This is the follow-up to City of Dusk. And I really enjoyed learning more about the world and getting to explore more of one of the other worlds, because in the City of Dusk, we're mainly interested in this one city that's kind of split up into multiple quadrants, and each quadrant is kind of ruled by a different deity. So we have Phos, who's like a god of light. We have like a death goddess. We have like a goddess of darkness. And then we're following kind of like the ruling families of each of these different quadrants are blessed by these different deities and so have magic powers associated with their deity. And there is just a lot of shenanigans afoot because there is kind of a almost terrorist cell doing things in the city in book 1. And so things happened. We found out a lot of information. And so it was just a direct sequel in every way that you could want it. The magic was more intense. We learned a lot more about the world. There was one character perspective in particular that I found to be a little bit repetitive, which started to kind of grate on my nerves a little bit towards the end, which is why it's only 4 stars and not higher. But it is an excellent sequel, and I can't recommend it highly enough. If you're looking for a series with all of the deities, all of the magic, and it's a ton of fun, I would definitely steer you towards this series. I will say that the characters do read younger. Like, I think this is technically like new adult, and it's from like last year or the year before when we were having a lot of YA authors doing their first adult works, and they definitely still felt like younger characters. So I would say that The Midnight Kingdom and The City of Dusk definitely fall into that camp as well. But if you're somebody that doesn't bother you, then I would still say it's worth giving a shot. And that concludes the 4-star reads that I have. So now we're in 4.5 or 5-star. I had 3 5-star reads, so love that for me. But The next book I will talk about is another series conclusion. So I finished the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. Jen Lyons is Chorus of Dragons. And I read The Poison Song. And I think it could have been better if I hadn't waited like basically a year in between book 2 and book 3, because we had a lot of information and world building stuff that I wasn't as up on. So I had to be a lot of like, wait, I feel like I'm supposed to know what this is. So that hindered me a little bit, but the ending of the trilogy was like, okay. There were certain chunks, especially with Tor, because I don't like Tourmaline or Tor. I find him really irritating. And so basically whenever we were with him, my enjoyment would go down. And then when we were with anybody else, it was a lot better. And I particularly don't like him because he's very much that kind of like self-flagellating type character where it's just like, I'm no good. Like, shut up. But if you want like crazy science fiction horror feeling antagonists with a very fantasy forward world, I can't recommend it more highly. Like, it is such a unique world building experience that is so worth the journey, in my opinion. And just the way it ends, like the most bittersweet and yet satisfying and yet like poignant. Like, it was just an excellent finale to the overall trilogy. It definitely had its flaws, but it was still fantastic. So, and then the next 3 are all 5-star reads. And so I'm just like debating with myself about what order to talk about them in, because I like to go to my most favorite at the end. And it's so hard. The first thing that I'll talk about is Dark Star Burning Ash Falls White. This is the follow-up and conclusion to the Song of Silver Flame Like Night duology, and the titles are long, but actually really pretty. It's by Amelie Zhao, and it is a older YA duology, very steeped in like ancient Chinese folklore with dragons and like turtle gods and a phoenix, and it's just everything you could want. And for a YA duology especially, I think the level of character development and nuance and level of theming is like next to none in this duology. It is fantastic. It will definitely probably leave you wanting more if you're like a usual adult fantasy reader, but if you're just looking for a quick, like I think they're both like 350 pages, it's a very fast duology to get into, and it doesn't fall into any of the kind of like tropey relationships that you would kind of, that people tend to associate with YA. So I think even if you're somebody who usually is like, I don't read young adult, I still think that this duology is fantastic and definitely worth giving a go. Oh my God, it's so dusty. I'm so sorry. So it is just everything. We are kind of doing that rising against an evil empire. In book 1, Song of Silver Flame Like Night, we are being introduced to our main characters. One of them has this mysterious tattoo on her arm that she doesn't totally know what it's for, but it's from her mom. And she's kind of working in a tavern and gets kind of caught up in a larger conflict because we are living in a time where an outside invading force that has this really cool kind of metal-based magic is invading and kind of taking things over and stamping out and killing the more native magic users, which is this very like chi-based magic that you can be from different schools of training and use your chi in different ways. It is so cool. And there are also these demon gods. And so we're kind of fighting against the evil empire while also vying to try to prevent them from getting the power of these demon gods. And there's a lot of questions of like, how far is too far to protect your nation? And it's just so good and so good. And the ending will leave you thinking for sure. I loved it and was very mad at the author at the same time. So I don't want to say any more than that, but like Dark Star Burning Ash Falls White is phenomenal. And I can't recommend it highly enough. Then the next thing I'll talk about is I did my reread of The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I won't say too much here because that is part of the Great Cosmere Along, and we have our live show for The Way of Kings discussion coming up in, I want to say the first or second weekend of March. We'll be posting all the details soon, so just keep a lookout for those. But I'll save all of my thoughts and feels for The Way of Kings, but it was even better than I remembered. And there's that one scene towards the end that literally, while I was reading it, gave me goosebumps. Like, it is fan-friggin-tastic, and I love The Way of Kings. So I can't, like, really speak more highly about that series. I don't know, like, if you haven't read this from my archive yet, why? What's wrong with you? Who hurt you? I would say that you should definitely check out The Way of Kings. It is so good. Sorry, like, the lighting is a little bit funky. And then the last thing I want to talk about today is The Slain Divine by David Dalglish. This is the conclusion to the Vagrant Gods trilogy, and it was kind of everything I could have ever wanted and yet could never have predicted would be a thing in the first two books. Like, if you are at all like me and you like fast-paced stories with amazing, compelling characters, you like having a multitude of sexualities represented. There is like a sapphic romance character, there is a gay character, and they're just characters, like, it's just part of them. It's not like in the forefront, like, hey, this is the gay character, and so everything about them has to, like, it's not that at all. If you like the Gods Among Us trope, like, it can't be any more Gods Among Us in the Vagrant Gods trilogy. Like, it is so good. And just the bonkers escalation to the final confrontation with the God Incarnate, like, it was everything I could have ever wanted. It was so friggin' good. If you haven't read the Vagrant Gods trilogy, I don't know what's wrong with you. I do have a spoiler-free review video of book 1 that I will link for you if you want a lot more details about book 1. But basically, we are following Cyrus and crew, and Cyrus is the prince of this island nation that in the very start of book 1 gets invaded by this outside force, and they murder his family and murder the gods, because in this world, basically every nation has their own deities associated with them, and there is this outside force where their deity is also their ruler, and he's known as the God Incarnate. And so he's trying to make a monotheistic world and is sequentially murdering these different deities and trying to take over. So like the starting sequence against Lycaena and Endarius, which is a butterfly goddess and a lion god that are the deities of this island nation, is like, like the start of the book is just so good. And then we're basically following Cyrus as he is raised to be this figurehead to fight back against this nation empire, and just the things that he goes through and the friendships that he makes along the way and just how he grows and where he ends up at the end of books. Like, it is just so friggin' good. Like, I cannot recommend it more highly. And if you haven't read it yet, you need to fix that ASAP because you're missing out. But that will do it for all of the books that I managed to read in December. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, and if you want to talk spoilers, just say spoilers and hit a couple of spaces, and I'm happy to talk about any of them because so many of them I had such a good time reading. If you just want to leave an emoji, leave some kind of mask for the Vagrant Gods trilogy, because if you know, you know. But that will do it. I hope to be back soon with my January wrap-up and then my favorite and least favorite reads of 2023. If you want to do any of the things, please like this video if you've liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more bookish chats like this from me. But that will do it for today's video. I will see you guys in the next one. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!